Hi, I'm Kim Belair, and I'm CEO of Sweet Baby Evil! In marketing, I was approached by a video game company where I got my start.
If you're one of these people that complain about forced diversity in media, I actually want to tell you something. You don't have a problem with forced diversity in media. You have one of two problems. You either have a problem with bad writing, that is true, or you have a problem with the fact that you're a racist, homophobic, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic asshole.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
And I first got in as a community developer, realized that it wasn't always something that was left to people demographically like myself.
You've got a lot of nerve. All of me is all.
Booty is all.
All of me is all.
Booty is all.
We work in AAA games. Right now we're working with places like WB Montreal, Ubisoft, Rocksteady.
We realized that as a unit, we were capable of, doing for others what had not been done for us.
What you've done for me? You killed me, is what you've done! You've signed my death warrant!
But on a secondary level, we work very hard to get marginalized talent into the industry, to protect them the way that we would want to have been protected, to lift them up, and to get them into an industry where they're too often shut out. And basically, I think to take over. If you're a creative working in AAA, which I did for many, many years, put this stuff up to your higher-ups. And if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them. With the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't give you what you want.
Terrorize this.
If you're one of these people that complain about forced diversity in media, I actually want to tell you something. You don't have a problem with forced diversity in media. You have one of two problems. You either have a problem with bad writing in media, or you have a problem with the fact that you're a racist, homophobic, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic asshole.
Fool, shut up. You're just mad because your ass is old.
Just mad cause your ass is old, motherfucker. First thing you do is just pick up the phone.
Eat a dick, nigga.
Living next to your home, motherfucking grandpa. Old nigga is on,
motherfucker.
But nonetheless, what a brilliant way to start off your video. I mean, how else are you supposed to get someone's attention other than to goad them for the higher click rate? Fortunately for us, no matter what Jaffe does, he can't take off on YouTube. His videos require assistance from other content creators like me. So you're welcome, David. Jaffe is an interesting character. I have no problem giving this man a few W's when he has good takes, and I equally hand him L's when he has bad takes. But, Jaffe is the type to always take the hardest to defend positions and dedicates himself to defending them as hard as possible. Why? Well, I don't know. Old age. Man's bored these days, I guess. Without a God of War game in front of him to work on, he has to keep entertained somehow. So he sees everybody going after Sweet Baby Inc. and he thinks to himself, I'm gonna have the complete opposite opinion. Just cause. He already put out another banger of a video a few months back batting for Sweet Baby Inc. But at the time I didn't want to respond to it because I knew what it was. It was Jaffe rambling about completely unrelated topics for too long while finally getting to the meat of the argument. So don't worry, I'm not going to pelt you over the head with all 15 minutes of David Jaffe. I don't think even David Jaffe would want to sit and listen to himself for 15 minutes. But I'll tell you one thing, if he sat down to actually listen to Kim Belair for more than 15 minutes, he may not have made this video, because the absolute insanity that comes out of that woman's mouth would have gotten a white man in trouble if it was the complete opposite. I mean, you should know this, Jaffe. You should be all too familiar with this crowd, seeing as how they came after you for old tweets, which landed you a suspension. Oh, well, you don't want to talk about that because you limited that stream where you ranted about it to members only. Making sure you hid the fact that the very same leftoids you're standing up for had no problem eating you alive over a lesbian joke. Even after all of this, Mr. Jaffe still finds it necessary to take the side of people who would have tried to replace him back then for a diversity hire if they could have. And he would have been a total cuck about it too. You know, Jaffe would have been like, well, okay, you can take my job, you're a black person. Absolutely unbelievable how he didn't learn his lesson from such an incident. I mean, shouldn't something like that make you realize that a lot of the anti-woke crowd is pretty justified in their sentiment? Because time and time again has shown that the woke crowd is indeed as fragile and sensitive as everybody makes them out to be. You know this all too well, and yet you still want to be a contrarian about it. Batting for SBI, a company led by a woman who openly admits she wants to terrify her clients to get what she wants, while also focusing all of her criticisms on white men, and she just never shuts up about white people. Whiteness is an issue for her. There's no denying it. We have documented evidence, audio and video of several SBI employees just openly stating how anti-white they can be. Now, Mr. Jaffe, SBI is the company you're batting for, but you're gonna have to go above and beyond because they're not the only ones. Consultation companies like this have existed for nearly 10 years now, and if you ask me, I think it's honestly all one giant money laundering scheme, which is why they're getting so aggressive against gamers who have started digging into them. Because, I mean, just take a look at this one. Gamer X. They literally, that's what they're called, Gamer X. Presentation, integrating queer themes in games. Workshop, gender identity in the workplace. Workshop, community management strategies for supporting LGBTQIA+ players.
This is the Gamerhood, and you are not welcome.
Come on. Years ago, the anti-woke crowd was told that they're nothing more than conspiracy theorists digging into stories that have no relevance or deeper meaning. White people aren't being replaced. Bullshit. There are companies who have made it their sole duty to ensure there are less white people, because in their heads, that's what it means to be inclusive.
Whether it's your fuckability, whether it's your diversity number, whether it's this is the season to hire a bunch of LGBT folks because we think it would be good for business. The idea that suddenly all of you folks have been these protectors of great writing and great visions for your whole lives, but you've never said anything. But now, when it is coming from more of a liberal, progressive direction as it relates to people who get hired, and specifically the stories and the characters in those stories that those people tell, then it's, oh, well, no, we have a problem because the movies are bad. Well,
yeah, well, that's probably because back then the LGBT community didn't have so many extra alphabet letters included. It was because back then the LGBT flag didn't continuously get different colors and stripes added to it. Essentially, the liberal mindset wasn't so extreme. We can pinpoint in time when this shift happened, and it coincides with the sudden massive dip in quality of writing. Well, in the Western world anyway. A lot of the people speaking out about this, well, they took good writing for granted, like me. Because as you state in this next part of the video,
the movies are bad. Well, the movies may be bad, and those people are with me. I agree.
And there you go. Like you stated, the movies are bad. Well, not just the movies, the video games, the TV shows, the comic books. It's all gone to shit. Not all of it, but a good chunk of intellectual properties people really love to have gone to complete shit. Established franchises making sudden changes to main characters, storylines, or the plot so they can be more inclusive without giving it a second thought are a major problem. We don't have right-wingers ruining film. Hollywood doesn't have a single bit of right-wing bias, so we know which political side is to blame. I get that's a very hard pill for people who are left-wingers to swallow. You're looking at a former one right here, who had to go through a year-long detox of everything I knew or once thought was right. But after years of being told by the anti-woke crowd that this is forced diversity, and being told over and over again it's not forced, and now here we are with you basically admitting it is forced, and now arguing that we shouldn't have a problem with it being forced. Like, don't you see? How are you unable to realize you've backed yourself into defending something that left-wingers have gaslit everybody into thinking isn't real? It's like that Man-Bear-Pig scene in South Park, where the guy who denied Man-Bear-Pig was real sees Man-Bear-Pig and says, oh, well, Man-Bear-Pig is real. What are you gonna do about it?
If a movie's bad, no matter what, a director and a writer and a creative troupe is responsible, within reason, to take the materials they have been given. Some of those materials are chosen, some of those materials are forced upon them, and to say, here's what we got, fellas. Let's go make a show. Let's go make a movie. Let's go make a game. And let's do it great. Okay, so even if, and I've, conceded this point, because once I did my first Sweet Baby Inc. video, you guys pointed out to me that it wasn't the fact that there was like a legal aspect compelling these companies to hire diverse folks. It was BlackRock and various investment firms would not suggest these studios or these conglomerates that own the studios for investment if those corporations did not hire a diverse workforce at the level that companies like BlackRock were demanding. But let me ask you this. End of the day, when these companies, game companies, movie companies, whatever, basically acquiesce to companies like BlackRock in order to get on their investment sheet and thus get money, how is that any different than when a company like Paramount told Val Kilmer, even though he had no interest in being in Top Gun, didn't want to be Iceman, probably his most famous role, they says, hey, you got a contract, you got to do it. We want you at a business level. We think this is good for us. I don't care if you, the artist, don't want to play the role. You're going to play the role and make us money. How is that different?
What in the hell are you talking about? Those two things are not even remotely similar. There's a difference between utilizing an actor you have on a contract and intentionally seeking out an ESG score. Two completely different intentions and situations. Forcefully diversifying a cast for the sake of an ESG score is nowhere near the same vein as having an actor reprise a role. I really can't believe you have to ask us how it's any different. I mean, like, really? I don't consider you a stupid person, Jaffe. I know you're not stupid, so why the unnecessary reach? Van Kilmer's role is almost necessary. I mean, that's an iconic character, Iceman. An actor coming back to play his role because it's necessary is not the same as bringing in unnecessary green hair, purple hair chick in your film to meet an ESG quota.
I understand that BlackRock telling Sony and Sony telling the developers do it this way because our diversity score is a different specifics than the Val Kilmer situation, but it's both big companies, big money telling artists, this is what we want and need for our business. You work for us and figure it out.
If you understand that, why are you wasting your time trying to use it as a talking point? You're asking yourself, how's that any different? While acknowledging it's not the same thing at all. What are you doing, Jaffe? Yes, these are all big companies, very powerful ones. But when it comes to BlackRock, they have a goal of forcing behaviors, as said by the CEO himself. We're talking about something on a grand scale, not an actor who has contractual obligations.
So if you want to talk about being disappointed in your entertainment these days, I think that's a great conversation to have. I think it's a valid conversation to have. But diversity is a smokescreen. It's got nothing to do with diversity. Because if forced diversity is what's making these movies and video games so bad, what you're really saying is the decades that have come before, where creatives have figured out how to deal with decisions made out of the creative, nurturing, loving perfection of the creative process, decisions that have come down from on high, those were easier to solve. It was easier to figure out how to make Jack Nicholson work in The Shining when Kubrick really wanted Robin Williams. It was easier to figure out how to deal with Eric Stoltz and Michael J. Fox in the Back to the Future recasting. But suddenly when it's dealing with writing black people or gay people into the story, well, mister, you're asking for a lot. You're asking for the impossible.
What are you talking about, Jaffe? We had plenty of black leads, Hispanic leads, Asian leads. Diversity isn't something that just suddenly started to exist. We had plenty of it in the 90s and before that. The issue is not diversity, it is forced diversity, which you keep trying to gaslight us into thinking isn't the issue we have. So stop with this what you're really saying nonsense. Diversity hires with little to no experience with the media that they're trying to work with is a big issue, and I shouldn't have to explain to you why that is. Being put into a position solely because you are a black woman or a gay man or a gay woman or a trans person has been prioritized over, hey, how much do you actually know and care about the media we're gonna have you work on? It reflects greatly in games like Suicide Squad or games like Forspoken, where the lead female voice actress had virtually no voice acting experience beforehand and is yet given a lead role for a major Square Enix game. But because they had to meet a black female lead quota, they just picked her anyway, and it shows in her performance. Why are we hiring inexperienced people? Why are we hiring female writers whose first gigs ever are major IP where they understand so little of the source material, the writing is almost comical? Forced diversity isn't a smokescreen, it's a real issue. And it became an issue when money was offered, because you know how companies operate. You tell them there's more money in doing this, they're gonna do it.
And let's not forget Beverly Hills Cop, the movie that made Eddie Murphy, you know, black Eddie Murphy, one of the biggest stars in the world. That was a movie that was written and they were going to have Stallone in it. Stallone comes in, you know, white Stallone. He comes in, tries to make it into more of an action summer movie. And they say, yeah, this is not working. They get rid of him. They kick the white guy out. They bring the black guy in. Somehow, they don't only make it work. Somehow, it doesn't feel like forced diversity. It feels like comedy motherfucking gold. Why? Well, here's why.
Well, that's because Eddie Murphy is actually funny. The right person was chosen for that role. There was no company financially bribing them to race swap characters. They actually had to go out of their way to find someone fit for the role. Eddie Murphy wasn't chosen as a political statement, which is currently what we're facing with modern day media.
Your issue is not diversity, unless it is. We'll get to that in a minute. The real issue is not diversity. The real issue is budget. The budgets on these AAA games and movies are through the roof. And with more money comes more fear. And with more fear, the studios throw a bunch more cooks in the kitchen to protect the money. And with all those cooks in the kitchen, the end product becomes watery and flavorless and bland and shit. And that's why you see the games you see getting hit. You're not seeing this in AA. You're not seeing this in indie. Yeah, indie has a lot of progressive games, but you also have a fucking game just came out where you can play as Alex Jones.
Well, that certainly plays a role, but I don't see how both can't be true. Why are they overhiring exactly? Who are they overhiring, Jaffe? And what is the incentive for overhiring these people? Could it involve a little bit of ESG money? Which is why it's not affecting indies that much or AA games? As you stated, indie studios and AA studios can't afford to do mass hirings on the scale we see with these AAA developers. You are half right. You're just simply refusing to acknowledge the other truth, and that's that the forced diversity also plays a role.
All right, you can do whatever you want if the budget is cheap enough. It's the AAA, quadruple A shit, if you listen to Ubisoft, that's getting hit because without the money they get from companies like BlackRock, they can't operate at the level that customers are demanding. So, of course, they're going to acquiesce to these demands, whatever you think of them. But here's the thing. If it turns out there's more people who want diversity-free gaming, movies, television shows than there are of people like me that either totally support and or don't have a problem at all with the diversity push, well then guess what? As much as Sony, let's just say, needs the BlackRock money, it's not going to do them any good. As much as Disney needs the BlackRock money, it's not going to do them any good if the products they make aren't making money back at the level to satisfy the investors in the first place. So that group will win and my group will lose when it comes to sort of what we see in the AAA space or in the big budget movie space. And that may happen. I honestly don't know if the anti-diversity crowd is a vocal minority or if they represent most people on the planet. No way of knowing, at least as far as I can tell.
Well, if developers are struggling to make back the money on these forced diversity projects, shouldn't that say enough for you? Too many instances of these projects flopping is a clear indicator that, yes, the crowd who doesn't like this may indeed be the majority. But I think the real answer here is that these are simply games that don't appeal to the original demographics. People didn't wait an entire decade to play a new Rocksteady game, only for it to turn out to be the Suicide Squad game. People didn't pick up Spider-Man 2 just to play as Mary Jane more than Venom. People didn't ask Square Enix to make anything like Forspoken. Nobody waited all these years to play The Last of Us 2 only to eliminate the character everybody actually cared about playing in favor of a female protagonist nobody liked. If you're making something that's not supposed to appeal to straight white males, then you're losing out on a fucking huge chunk of your audience. If that was your original audience. However, if you're making something that was always targeted for females and gay people, then it should do well within that demographic, but they don't actually support these products that are directly made for them. Essentially, in the attempt to appeal to everyone, they've ended up appealing to absolutely no one. How are you supposed to make your money back? There ain't no way in hell you can convince me an audience that big is all racist. People are simply not going to buy what they don't find interesting, and coincidentally, the majority of what they don't want to buy is plagued with woke propaganda. Not because these people don't believe in basic human rights, they just want to play the vidya they remember growing up. But now that original demographic is no longer being targeted, and we're all really supposed to question why these AAA games are not meeting the sales the developers want? The answer is right there in front of our faces.
But here's the thing, if you are in the category of the people who don't want the diversity, then the question is why? Now, my guess is most people don't want it because they think it makes for bad products.
Think? Yeah, we just think these diversity hires are making bad products versus the results of the product. Yeah, okay. The gaslighting has to stop, David. I know for a fact, due to the exact words from these Sweet Baby Inc. employees, that their whole goal is a takeover of the industry. They make it very clear what their intentions are. They don't shy away from it, so we absolutely know their involvement. And when they do their part, these products just do not turn out good. And they don't become commercial successes either. And knowing about this company's existence and what they do in video games, people are now going to actively avoid whatever they work on, making Sweet Baby Inc. more of a liability than an asset now. That doesn't come from people thinking it's bad because of the diversity checks. It comes from the fact that the products are legitimately bad, which basically goes to show that diversity is not our greatest strength.
And it also makes sense that as the audiences for video games grow, I mean, it ain't like it was in the 90s, man. Tons more people play games. Lots of women play games now. Almost 50% of the game playing public are women of all different types of games, not just Candy Crush like a lot of you guys say. So of course it makes sense they're going to want to, when they're spending that kind of money, make sure that the net is cast wider. If you worked at these companies, you would do the same if you wanted to keep your job.
So if that's the case, where are the women showing up for Forspoken? Where are the women showing up for Suicide Squad? Where are the women showing up for The Last of Us 2? These games were obviously made to appeal to more of them, and yet they're not showing up, almost as if the products aren't good, and even women realize it. Almost as if trying to forcefully diversify the product hasn't made a difference. If forced diversity isn't harmful, we can at the very least say with certainty that it's completely useless.
But now let's get to the part that enrages progressives like myself. We can come together and kumbaya over bad writing, and man, it would have been great if the last Indiana Jones wasn't shit, and on and on and on. I'm with you 100%. I love entertainment. I hate when entertainment's vision of the artists is compromised. But the part that enrages people like myself is not that. It's that people use that as an excuse when it's not the real thing that's upsetting them, and when the real thing that's upsetting them is the diversity. And look, man, a lot of people won't just come out and say it.
Well, exactly how are people supposed to like something so forced, Jaffe? Nobody likes forced humor. Nobody likes forced political takes in their media. In general, forcing something onto audiences never works out. You're a wrestling fan, right? You know what it's like to feel when a company forces a wrestler on you nobody wants to watch. Day in, day out, 24/7, Austin Theory on your screen. And now, people hate him because he's just too forced onto a crowd. The only thing worse than tokenism in real life is corporate tokenism. It's how you get characters like Abby in The Last of Us 2, that to this day, not a single gamer is ever going to like, no matter how hard you try. Forcing these diversity characters onto people when they were buying these products for their original protagonists is going to piss off a lot of folks. And you won't be able to blame them, because in that moment they are noticing that this forced diversity is the culprit behind some of the terrible writing decisions made. There's no way in hell you're going to be able to gaslight all of those millions of players, Jaffe. And how are you supposed to deny that to an audience that can obviously see characters they enjoyed killed off and replaced for minority characters, or race swapped, or gender swapped? To the point, some directors are willing to be completely historically inaccurate. We're talking about people completely rewriting history for the sake of being inclusive. So, if people don't want to see black people in a medieval historical setting, that is completely reasonable. I don't know why you're saying people can't articulate the point or get it across. That's simply not true. I could name you dozens of content creators who've put it into words perfectly, better than me. When modern day politics are injected into media, it's to normalize the absolute lunacy of leftist ideology. Because it's certainly not happening with right-wing beliefs, is it? People who don't believe in this stuff shouldn't have to be pelted over the head with it in the media they once loved. Game developers are playing favorites. They're showing their bias and forcing it onto media not suited for the original demographic who doesn't believe in this. It would be like if X-Men suddenly became pro-conservative out of nowhere because it was in control of a conservative development team, which is something that doesn't even exist, practically. You most certainly would not enjoy it. Forced conservative political views would be demonized by all publications, but when it's leftist ideology, things like DEI, it's somehow objectively and morally the right thing to do. And people who don't believe in that have every right to take a stand against it.
They'll say it's the writing, but they can't really articulate it and get around some of the points I just made. So inevitably, they'll get to these kinds of comments. I don't like diversity in my entertainment because I don't want to see so many black people or gay people or trans people. They don't make up a big percent of the population. Why is it they're in all the goddamn entertainment these days? And my answer is, if the entertainment's good, it shouldn't fucking matter.
Yeah, no, we're done here. You're clearly being disingenuous, Jaffe. You're drawing comparisons that are not remotely similar, and you're reaching as far as possible to defend something so unnecessary. And you're not the only one. There's already a defense force from Kotaku, journalists, game developers, or former game developers like you. You know, the usual suspects that we all predicted would defend this. You guys are as predictable as the writing you're defending. But whatever, Jaffe, if you want to keep lying to yourself that this sick, twisted experiment is working, go ahead. Me, on the other hand, I will not buy or support what this company touches. And if you don't either, then consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing if you so choose to. That being said, let us move on to the other culprits in the next video.
Fritongo sucks ass.